Bodyguards of our masters served through the war between the states, and we have been to all the reunions, and they have treated us just the same as any other soldier. I'm Marmaduke, Joe Shelby, bodyguard. Done everything they told me to do. So one day, General Marmaduke told me to go and get some chickens. I told him I didn't know what's going on. He started, got his gun, looked like I'm red chaps on there. I told him, yes, sir, I'll go right now. Well, you all know how old I am? I'll be 81 years old the first day in August. Damn Wednesday.
One of the most famous generals in the Confederate Army was Major General Nathan Bedford Forrest. He had 45 slaves whom he took from his plantation to serve with him during his command.
Probably one of the most elite units in the Confederate military was Nathan Bedford Forrest Cavalry, and specifically one of his units, his own escort company. These were essentially the Green Berets of the Confederate cavalry. They were handpicked, the best troops. They were put into this escort company, and when the fighting really got down to the wire, Forrest would put in his escort company to basically carry the day. Of these handpicked men, about 20% of them were black cavalrymen. That these were some of the bravest, some of the best shots, some of the just most fearsome men that the Confederate cavalry had, and these black and white troopers formed this elite group of Forrest escort.
Forrest was a major slave trader prior to the Civil War. His attitude towards black was one, at best, of paternalism. He viewed blacks as property. After the war, he viewed blacks as having a particular place in society.
And after Reconstruction was over, he actually worked through the Democratic Party to bring black voters in this area into the fold of the Democratic Party. So if anything, he was a man of his times in this area of the country.
My great-grandfather, as a Union soldier here on April 12, 1864, faced black Confederate soldiers under the direction of General Nathan Bedford Forrest. He was also wounded here, and I don't know whether he was wounded by a black Confederate soldier or a white Confederate soldier, but I know he was wounded and he was captured here, and from April 12, 1864 until October the 31st, 1865, that is when he returned back to his unit.
I think fundamentally Forrest was a pragmatist. While slavery was a legal institution, he was willing to use the system and benefit from the system. When the war was over, he recognized slavery was through, that it was never coming back, and he went about trying to rebuild his fortune. Forrest addressed some of the black citizens of Memphis after the war and told them that the war was over and that he would advise them to do the same thing that he advised the men who fought with him, and that was to become good citizens and to vote. He said, "I will not tell you how to vote, but vote." He was a pragmatist. People don't realize that, and too infrequently give him that credit when it comes to issues particularly involving slavery.
They say,
Salaam Alaikum. Mr. Moderator, our distinguished guests, brothers and sisters, our friends and our enemies.
Bismillah wa salatu wa salam Rasulullah wa ba'd. In the name of Allah, may the peace and blessings of Allah be upon his last and final messenger. As to what follows, family, friends, foes, haters, and hateettes, welcome back to the Feachaz. I greet you all in peace and love and no hatred in my heart. Assalamu alaikum rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. So before we begin, please like, please subscribe, and please share. As you know, we got a hella lot of haters up in here. And this particular live has been a long time coming. And this person that we're talking about today, Thomas Sowell, we touched about him a few videos before, but we never really got too serious about him because he's incredibly controversial. Okay, so Thomas Sowell is what you would say like these black folk in the video that we saw right here. They are the upholders, the black upholders of white slavery over black folk. Okay, he's controlled opposition for the Republican Party and for right-leaning politics, and he's been like that for as long as I know. I started stumbling across his videos in the 90s when I was younger. And I didn't realize he was controlled opposition until much later into the fact. Okay. So Thomas Sowell, now, why are we choose now to talk about Thomas Sowell? Why? Because I am tired of seeing black folk reacting to his videos, and not just non-Muslims, even Muslims from years ago will tell me, well, you got to listen to Thomas Sowell. You got to listen to Thomas Sowell. Like, I don't know who Thomas Sowell is. I know very well who Thomas Sowell is. Okay? It's y'all who just stumble across his material, and now you think he's the best thing since white bread. Okay? No pun intended. But you would think that black people would be the most invested in learning their actual history, like this history of slavery. You would think that black people would be the most interested and vigorous in trying to find out about their history. And you would think that these same black people would think twice about other black people, not just dismissing slavery, but making chattel slavery in the Americas seem like a normal historical occurrence. And you would think that they would be suspicious of a white supremacist apologist. But that the issue is not just that you would think these logical thoughts. It doesn't mean that other people with cameras and microphones and YouTube accounts are thinking the same thing. You understand? When your credibility is aligned with your morality, then the things that you say and do, it will become apparent. So someone who is credible, when you cross-reference and inspect what their sources are, or sources of information are, right? It would check out, correct? And someone who isn't credible, it would be the opposite, correct? So the morality of the first individual, his morality aligns with the truth because his sources have checked out, and he would be known as honest, a bare minimum honest, and trustworthy. You know, his sources are trustworthy. He's coming with receipts and whatnot. He's honest and trustworthy. And the morality of the second individual aligns with someone who lies, correct? He would be known as a liar. And the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, he said that it is sufficient enough for someone to be known as a liar that he spreads everything that he hears. This hadith here is the modus operandi of choice for the most despicable liars on social media today. They hear something, They don't take the time to verify the veracity of the claims, but they will react and make the most outlandish lies seem like the truth. They pass it off as a truth. This is what social media is about today. And how many hundreds and thousands of Black people all over the world and all over social media are spreading the lies of Thomas Sowell without even having the self-respect to actually read a book on slavery first. Like, how difficult is it to read a book? As for me, like I said, I've been listening to Thomas Sowell for years, and I recognize very early that when he talks about history, you need to outright reject anything that he says about history, because he lies. He just lies about history. Like, what do you want me to say, right? If he's talking about economics or the Moynihan Report or aspects of Black culture, okay. But pretty much anything he says about the transatlantic slave trade is politicized and not factual. He essentially regurgitates lost cause myth talking points, like we just saw in the video, the clip in the beginning. That is the lost cause myth. You know, slavery was good for Black folk, and the masters were merciful, and we were happy slaves, and these type of things, and we fought on behalf of our masters and whatnot. That right there is the lost cause myth, and he regurgitates that stuff. But he doesn't just regurgitate it. He adds an academic articulation to his talking points without citing any references. He won't cite a single reference. Yet y'all Negroes are so slow to read a book and so quick to spread his outrageous nonsense, which even if you really just did like a few minutes on Google, you would quickly debunk what he's saying. Very quickly. It don't take much. It doesn't take much. But because Thomas Sowell, in his own right, he is a genius, he's incredibly cerebral and intelligent. You know, if you guys don't know like his accolades, he is an author, okay? He's an economist, he's a social theorist, he's a political commentator, and he is also a senior fellow at the Hoover Institution, that think tank, the Hoover Institution. The Hoover Institution, with the likes of which include huge minds such as Henry Kissinger, Milton Friedman, Gary Becker, many, you know, thought leaders. And Secretary of State Condoleezza Rice, she became the Institute's director. Okay, so you're not talking about no chump change here. You're talking about some of the brightest people on earth. Okay. He attended night classes at Howard University, a historically Black college. Okay. And his high scores in college boards exams and recommendation by two professors helped him gain admission to Harvard University. He graduated at Harvard with a degree in economics. Okay? So he's incredibly smart. He has a master's degree in the Columbia University, right? He studied under George Stigler, and he later received a Nobel Prize in economics. Okay. So, and he also studied a Doctor of Philosophy degree under Stigler as well. Okay. So he's very, very educated, very, very intelligent. But the one thing he isn't is a historian. He is not a historian. However, he is deeply involved in the erasure of history and slavery and pushing revisionist history points as fact And if anybody just took the time to cross-reference or just to inspect what he's saying, you will see very quickly what the heck is the guy talking about. But because he's so intelligent, nobody even takes the time to do that. He doesn't have a single historian backing up his claims. Not any credible ones anyway. Not one. Not a single one. But black folk are spreading his clips and videos in 2023 like it's revelation. Because y'all just found out about him. Okay? I never seen anything like this, man. You've been pretty much spouting the same stuff for as long as I remember, at least 30 years. But now people are spreading this stuff. It's insane. So anyways, what we're going to do, right? Because like I said, it's so easy to debunk his stuff. It don't take much. So I have 3 books with me here. I have this book here, Stand from the Beginning by Dr. Ibram X. Kendi. Okay. I have this book over here, They Were Her Property by Stephanie Jones Rogers. And I have this book, The Legendary, The Secret Relationship Between Blacks and Jews. Okay. By the Nation of Islam. Okay. The first one, the first edition. Okay. This is all we're going to use. Okay. We're going to watch his video and we're going to see if we can find from these 3 books. I have many or more, mind you. I have plenty more, but I don't want to make this video a marathon so much. All right. I mean, we'll go as long as we need to. However, we're going to see if we can debunk some of his outlandish claims with just these 3 books only, and how quickly we can do it too. Okay, let's subscribe, share. Let's get to it. Let's get to that nitty-gritty, shall we? Let's do it. Let me just pull up this video here now. One second. Let me just pull this thing up here. And if anybody thinks that they can come and defend Mr. Thomas Sowell, including I tagged him, by the way. I don't know if he's gonna watch it. You know, he's way too much. He's way above my level for sure. He's above my level. But all we are doing is proving that he lies about slavery, and that's it. That's it. And I'm going to show you how simple and easy it is. Very, very easy. Just go over here. See if I can pull this up. Oh, let me get this up here. All right. Give me a few minutes, y'all. There we go. Okay, so that's done. Okay. So let me get this thing up here. Don't worry, it's going to be worth it. That'll be worth the wait. Okay, just trust me on this. This has been a long time coming. I'm so surprised nobody else thought to do this, but you heard it here first. You heard it here on the Feachaz first. Another Feachaz original. Thomas Sowell lies about slavery. Surprise, surprise.
Slavery.
Give me a minute here. There we go. Let me know if the sound is going all right. Press number. All right. Okay, so press number 1 if y'all can hear, okay? Number 1 if y'all can hear.
The instrument of slavery was largely not the enslavement of racially different people.
Okay, so the first claim is that he's saying is that slavery Okay, so that's the first claim, right? That throughout history, slavery wasn't done on racial lines. Okay, that's the first claim. Let's keep watching, y'all.
Across an ocean. People were centuries before the first African was brought to the Western Hemisphere. Before the modern era, by and large, Europeans enslaved other Europeans, Asians, and Africans enslaved other Africans, and the indigenous people.
So his claim is that slavery historically has never been under racial lines, as he claims, but rather it was an issue of convenience. You have some other tribes in close proximity to you, you enslave them. Now, this right here, this claim right here is true, but what he is saying is that the racial lines slavery never happened. So the question is that part true? Yes or no? Okay, so let's just keep listening. Let's keep listening.
Slavery was not based on race, on scale as to promote an ideology of racism.
So he says that slavery was not based on race, nor was it based on theories of race. That's his claim. The reason why he's saying theories of race is he's trying to sideswipe critical race theory. That's why he worded it in that way. He's a very intelligent guy. Okay, so I'm going to read from the book. Let me show y'all. Actually, I'm going to read from the book, the first book I showed you, Stamped from the Beginning. I'm reading directly from the book. Okay, let me just show y'all 1 second. I'm going to read from this book, Stamped from the Beginning. Okay, let's see what he said, if what he says is true. Shall we? This is an actual historian now. We're talking about historian, Dr. Ibram X. Kendi. Y'all know who Ibn Khaldun is? Who knows who Ibn Khaldun is? Y'all know who he is, right? Let's read what he said first, because I want the Muslims to hear this. Ibn Khaldun, he made a statement about something that Ibn Battuta said, okay? So I'm going to read. This is directly from this book, okay? Not the Muslim books, okay? This book here, okay? Ibn Battuta was an oddity, an abhorred oddity among the Islamic intelligentsia in Fez, Morocco. Oh, hold on. Let me go back a little bit. Hold on. Okay, yes. Ghana, Mali, Songhai developed empires that could rival and size, power, and scholarship and the wealth of the world. And to what intellectuals at the University of Two and scholarship and pumped in students from around West Africa. Songhai grew to be the largest. Mali may have been the most illustrious, the world's greatest global trotter in the 14th century, who trotted from North Africa to Eastern Europe, Eastern Asia, and decided to see Mali for himself in 1352. There is security in their country. Ibn Battuta is speaking here. Ibn Battuta is speaking about Mali. There is complete security in their country. Okay? Ibn Battuta marveled in his travel notes. Neither traveler nor inhabitants in it have anything to fear from robbers or men of violence. This is Africa, Black Africa, Western Africa, Muslim Western Africa that Ibn Battuta is talking about in the 3rd century. Okay? What did he say? Neither traveler or inhabitant in it have anything to fear from robbers or men of violence. Ibn Battuta. Okay? But look, Ibn Battuta was an oddity Islamic intelligentsia in Fez, Morocco. Hardly any scholars had traveled and Battuta's trail accounts threatened their own armchair credibility in depicting foreigners. None of Battuta's antagonists was more influential, listen, was more influential tower of the Muslim world at his time than Tunisian Ibn Khaldun. You know Ibn Khaldun? Okay? Ibn Khaldun, who arrived in Fez just as Battuta returned from Mali, people in the dynasty and official positions whispered to each other that he must be a liar. Khaldun reported in 1377 in the Muqaddimah, the Islamic history of the pre-modern world. Khaldun then painted a very different picture of sub-Saharan Africa in the Muqaddimah. The Negro nations, this is Ibn Khaldun speaking, the Negro nations are as a rule, listen, submissive to slavery. What did Thomas Sowell say about slavery not being racial? This is 1377, a full 100 years before the North American slave trade. Ibn Khaldun said, the Negro nations are, as a rule, submissive to slavery. Khaldun surmised, because Negroes have little that is essentially human. This Ibn Khaldun, the great scholar, okay, and possess attributes that are quite to those of dumb animals. But there's more. The same book. The same book, okay? Stand from the beginning. There's more. See, this is why you reference your quotes. Thomas Sowell made a claim, correct? How quickly did we debunk that claim? Did it take much? Did it take long? It didn't take much. It didn't take long. But you know, Bilal, that is more, I would say, like modern in the ancient history game. Maybe he's talking about ancient history. Okay, let's talk about ancient history, shall we? Shall we? Richard Mather, okay, was installed as a pastor in Dorchester's North Church near the renowned North Church of the New Boston, which was pastored by John Cotton. Okay. Mather, in all likelihood, steered the selection of Henry Dunster to lead colonial America's college, Harvard's forerunner, in 1640. What year are we talking about? 1640. We're talking about 1640, right? This is what we're talking about, okay? Like the founders of Cambridge, Harvard before them, the founders of William and Mary, 1693, Yale, 1701, the University of Pennsylvania, 1740, Princeton, 1746, Columbia, 1754, Brown, 1764, Rutgers, 1766, Dartmouth, 1769. So I'm just giving you a timeline here, okay? Okay, now look, listen. The other 8 colonial colleges regarded ancient Greek and Latin literature as universal truths worthy of memorization and unworthy of critique. I repeat, Greek and Latin literature as universal truths worthy of memorization and worthy of critique. In studying Aristotle, the Christian Puritans. Learned rationality. Where did they get the rationales for human hierarchy? Aristotle, ancient Greek philosophy. And they began to believe that some groups were superior to other groups. In Aristotle's case, listen, ancient Greeks were superior to all non-Greeks. The Puritans believed that they were superior to the Native Americans and the African people, and even Anglicans. That is, all non-Puritans. Aristotle, who lived when 384 to 322 BC, concocted a climate theory. What, pray tell, is the climate theory? I'm about to tell y'all. It is an ancient theory that persists all the way up until this very day. The climate theory. What is the climate theory? Thomas Sowell? What is it? Since you want to take up history, Thomas Sowell, let's do this. You're way more educated than me, have way more accolades than me, but you have yet to source a single one of your outlandish claims. Here we are debunking them in just a few minutes. Okay? Look at here. Look. The climate theory to justify Greek superiority is saying that extreme hot or extreme cold climates produce intellectually, physically, and morally inferior people who are ugly and lack the capacity for freedom and self-government. Who are these people that are living in extreme hot climates? Somebody put it in the chat. And who are these people that are living in extreme cold climates? Put it in the chat, please. Because we want to make sure that we're talking about the same people here. Who are the ones living in extreme hot climates, and who are the ones living in extreme cold climates? Who are they? Somebody put it in the chat, please. Who are these people? Who are these people? A scholar like Abdurrahman Muhammad ibn Khaldun, yes, that Abdurrahman Muhammad ibn Khaldun, that one, yes. May Allah reward you and bless you and multiply it for you 100,000-fold. I mean, Brother Kev D. That Ibn Khaldun, the Negro race, his propensity is to be a slave. That Ibn Khaldun. Some 100 years before the transatlantic slave trade. Then you have the ancient Greek philosopher, Aristotle, that people in extreme hot places or extreme cold climates produced intellectually, physically, and morally inferior people who are ugly and lack the capacity for freedom and self-government. Who is he talking about? Who is he talking about? Who are these people who are living in extreme hot climates or extreme cold climates, one or the other? Who are these talking about? Who is in extreme hot climates? Who is he talking about? Somebody put in the chat. And who lives in extreme cold climates? Somebody put in the chat. Let's continue. Aristotle labeled Africans. What did he label them? Burnt faces. The original meaning in Greek of Ethiopian. Hello. What does Ethiopian mean? A burnt face. A burnt face. Okay. And viewed the ugly extremes of pale or dark skins as the effect of extreme cold or extreme hot climates. The people who are living extreme cold are living where? You're talking about these European countries, correct? Particularly these Eastern Europeans, correct? They live in the extreme cold climates, like the Slavs, where the root word slave comes from. And the ones who live in extreme hot climates are the Ethiops, as he called the burnt faces. The burnt faces. All of this was in the interest of normalizing Greek slave-holding practices and Greece's rule over the Western Mediterranean. So what was that again? Thomas Sowell? What was
on theories about race. Only wherever a separate people were enslaved, they were disdained as to on about race. Only relatively late in history did enslavement across racial lines occur on such a scale as to promote an ideology of racism that
Sorry, y'all. I'm getting bad connection here, man. Sorry about that. Right, let me try this again, y'all. I apologize. My connection, man. I got to do something about this. But at any rate, you can see that slavery, it was committed against all kinds of things, right? Country, religion, caste, or race. This is true. But it's not like what this guy said, that it was never done on basis of race in the past. Not even remotely close. How you have Aristotle talking about the extreme hot and the extreme cold. Even though the concept of race as itself didn't begin, the foundations of race were already laid. So what you talking about? And then you have these silly Negroes spreading this stuff all over the place. Let's get back to it. 1 second, y'all.
The enslaved, they were Christians, became the most.
You see how he had to step one in there, right? You see how he snuck that one in there? Where did he get this information from anyways? Have you ever heard in your life? I've been Muslim for over 30 years. Not once have I ever heard a Muslim call a Christian dog. Just like that, out of the blue. Just like out of the blue, just like that. Like, where are you getting this stuff from? Like, do you have a reference? Anyways, let's keep watching. Let's keep watching, y'all.
Visible difference between slaves and West to make racism the driving force behind historically recent factor, the cause of an institution which originated.
Now you see how he did that? You see how he did that? He is equating the devil chattel slavery, transatlantic slave trade, that devil slavery, that demonic slavery, with the historical reality of slavery of the past. And he doesn't make any differentiation, but what he does here is he says, and you can see it right there, in the quotes right there, you can quote it right there, an institution which originated thousands of years earlier. So he's saying, how can you say that when slavery existed thousands of years before this alleged racial type slavery? You see what he did there? Let's keep going, y'all.
This enshrinement of racism as an factor.
Okay, well, let's test that theory. Thomas Sowell. He is saying that to make slavery about racism is more to do with modern agendas, correct? That's what he said. I didn't say it. I'm not the Harvard graduate. I'm not the Hoover Institute fellow. Thomas Sowell said, let's rewind that again and let's listen to it again, okay?
This enshrinement of racism as an overarching...
Heard it, right? Y'all heard it, right? The secret relationship between blacks and Jews. Let's read, shall we? Like, subscribe, share me up on Patreon. This dude don't know what he is saying. Or he does, actually. He knows very well that this demon chattel slavery, he knows exactly what it is. But again, he's controlled opposition. He has to try to lean black folks into the right and to get them on board with the right political agenda. How do you do that? How do you get black folks to trust their white supremacists? By making slavery not look so bad, okay? Africans were brought in large concentrations and warehoused by Jews as the slave trade became a major feature of Jewish economic life. Who's saying this? Not me, it's Raphael, okay? The fear of slave masters was a phrase which frequently appeared in official documents. At no time did the number of whites exceed 7%. This is in Suriname. Remember, we kept telling y'all that in the South, in the States, the number of blacks owned by white folks was 5-1, which is why up until this very day, the most populated cities, black cities in the States, happen to be in the South. In South America, it was much more. In the West Indies, it was much more. You see those countries in the West of the Caribbean as black islands today. But that is a very recent and new phenomenon in world history, which only took a few hundred years. As the natives were completely wiped out, starting with Columbus and his arrival to, I can't remember which island it was, right? But it started with him, totally wiped out all the natives. And when the Spanish and the Portuguese and the Dutch, they started bringing slaves to the South Americas and the Caribbean, this is the numbers we're talking about. 7% white people, the rest were black and natives, okay? The number of slaves by the end of the 18th century in the plantation region outside the city, there was one white for every 65 blacks. One white for every 65 blacks in Suriname. Despite the repeated instructions from the authorities that there should be at least one overseer for every 25 slaves, the Jews at times made up half the white population. So, Thomas Sowell, the question begs, if it wasn't based on racial lines, as you claim, then how do we have a situation in Suriname where you have one white person for every 65 black people? How did that happen? How did that happen? Why weren't they kidnapping Europeans? Isn't Europe a little bit closer? Why weren't they doing that? You need to explain that to us. Furthermore, we know why they didn't do that, okay? We know that the church explicitly made it a religious duty to enslave Africans. Black Africans, that is. Let me find something for y'all in the same book. 1 second, y'all. Can you imagine? Just the audacity of this man. But what's more embarrassing is the amount of black people that spread this stuff out without even bothering to go read a book. John Gabriel Stedman. Y'all know who John Gabriel is? John Gabriel Stedman was a Dutch-born Scottish soldier. And he was a traveler. And he wrote a book called The Narrative of a 5 Years Expedition Against the Revolted Negroes of Suriname. For those of you who don't know, Suriname was a Dutch colony. And up until this day, they speak Dutch. You have an entire country of Black Dutch in South America. It's all Dutch-speaking black people. Okay? So, Mr. Stedman, Gabriel Stedman, 1796. 1796. Mind you, 1796, people. And he is describing with his own eyes what he is seeing. Not a black person, not some political leftist, a Dutch explorer, soldier, traveler, okay? The English explorer, Captain John Gabriel Stedman, assisted the colonists in their wars with the Maroons, the slaves, okay? And wrote a narrative of his expeditions. He described the black slaves in Suriname as being kept nearly naked with a diet of little more than a few yams and bananas. The slave women, listen to this part. Listen to this part. And you better hide your kids because this is going to get really descriptive here. It's going to get descriptive. If you don't want your kids to hear some crazy things, you better hide them now. I'm giving you a chance. Okay? The slave woman, and he quotes, must yield to the loathsome embrace of an adulterous and licentious manager, or see her husband cut to pieces for endeavoring to prevent it. Did y'all hear that? Didn't just Pearly Things say that slavery, a lot of slavery was embellished? Was this an embellishment? Was this an embellishment? But we're going to come back to this later. But the point is, he's describing white slave masters who are a huge minority, mind you, and their embellished behavior on their African slaves in Suriname.
For slavery.
Man, watch, y'all.
Racist arching causal factor towards far more with current agenda. The form in which slavery has most today has been a long book.
Is this true? How many of y'all heard or learned your information about slavery from Roots? Just put yes or no in the chat, please. Which one of y'all got your slavery education from Roots by Alex Haley? Put it in the chat, please.
The form in which the story has reached today is many on the historical.
Did y'all hear that? Look, family. Look.
Roots by Alex Haley, challenged on the historical accuracy of Roots. Haley tried to is open to the same objections as other instrumental myth making. First is the objection that society is incalculable and can easily outweigh in its long-run consequences, especially taking.
Did y'all catch that, right? Which one of y'all got your slave education from Roots by Alex Haley? Did Alex Haley ever call his book a historical account? Did he ever say that? Or did he say it was a story and a myth, a story for his people to live by? So when Malcolm X was talking about the house Negro and the field Negro, did he get that story from Roots? Did he get it from Roots? How many years did he give that speech long before Roots was even made into a book? When Frederick Douglass said that an education makes a man incompatible of being a slave, did he get that from Roots? Did he get that from Roots? And when Mr. Gabriel Stedman, okay, secret relationship between black and Jews, when Gabriel Stedman said this white man in 1796, and he's witnessing with his own eyes, when he says, and I'm quoting, the slave woman must yield to the loathsome embrace of an adulterous, licentious manager or see her husband cut to pieces for endeavoring to prevent it. Did he get that from Roots too in 1796? Thomas Sowell? As a matter of fact, Roots is a lightweight to his description of what was going on. Roots, as Brother C.L. Edwards is saying in the chat, was watered down. Let us see what Mr. John Gabriel Stedman said in 1796. Let's compare it what anything in Alex Haley's series Roots. Let's compare any old thing. Okay, let's continue to read. Okay, let's read now. Okay. Many destroyed themselves by suicide, ran away, or if they stayed, they would grow sad and spiritless. This is a quote. Languish under diseases and render the patient a shocking spectacle. Many contracted tapeworms, I'm quoting here, Thomas Sowell, sometimes 2 yards in the length, and leprosy, which covers the whole body with scales and ulcers. Breath stinks, the hair falls off, the fingers and toes become putrid and drop away joint after joint. Did he get that from Roots? The unhappy sufferer may linger sometimes for many years, separated from all society and condemned to a perpetual exile in some remote corner of the plantations. Is that Roots? Is that Roots? Is anything that you saw in Roots even remotely comparable to this? Anything? The most famous scene in Roots was, my name is Toby. Okay? My name is Kunta Kinte. When Kunta Kinte got his butt whipped by the black overseer. That was the most memorable scene. Is that scene even comparable to what we're reading right now? But we haven't even got to the good stuff yet. Okay? We have not gotten to the good stuff yet. Y'all ready? The tortures were horrifying and included flogging. We all know about the flogging. Mutilation, hanging. We all know about the mutilation, hanging, and quartering. You know quartering? You know quartering, right? When you quarter a chicken, they were doing this to human beings. Drowning, starving to death, breaking out of teeth. Listen to this one. Okay, this is original. I never heard this before I read this book. Listen. Stinging to death by mosquitoes and other insects. Did y'all hear that? What kind of demon thinks of this type of way to torture a person? Stinging to death by mosquitoes and other insects, as well as burning alive at the stake. These sadistic tortures were performed seemingly for the sheer pleasure of the Caucasian master, Thomas Sowell. Where are your quotes again? Oh, you're quoting Alex Haley admitting that he wrote a non-historical story to leave a mythical legacy for his people. That's what you got? But how are black people spreading Thomas Sowell to begin with? This is what I don't understand. How difficult is it to pick up a book? Any book. Any old book. You know how many books I got? And see if it's consistent to what he's saying right now. We're not done. Slitting up their noses for mere sport. Slitting up their noses or cutting off their ears from private pique. These are accounted mere sport. When the master died, listen to this one, y'all. When the master died, the principal part of his slaves were beheaded and buried along with him. There was one report of a Jewish woman who murdered a black woman by running a red-hot poker through her. Which part of Roots compares to this, Thomas Sowell? If we're talking about lies now, I think the lies that Mr. Alex Haley was telling in his story, Roots, was actually protecting your narrative, but instead of leaving him alone, you went after him, and now how you look. How you look now, okay? The Harvard graduate economist genius. How you look? Let's keep going, y'all. Let us keep going. Oh, this is too easy. This is too easy. I'm sorry about the connection, but like seriously, man, too easy. Too easy for this. Let's keep going, y'all.
Second, even the short by no means clear, much as territorial irredentism has been.
And there it is. There it is. He is essentially telling you why he's a revisionist historian. Oh, let bygones be bygones, and those are the old days, and black people need to pick up ourselves by our bootstraps. And this is where Just Pearly Things gets her information from. This is where she takes her history lessons from, for y'all. Thomas Sowell admitted 1% of white folks in the South were slave owned. 1% only. This is the person y'all doing reaction videos to and listening to and spreading his stuff out. Y'all must be tripping.
rather than debate current ideological try to actual history planet, leaving so little awareness of how and why it vanished. Volumes continue to be published about and historians pour through archives and for more destroy the elaborate systems and imitating. Wow.
You see what he's doing here? Y'all see what he's doing here? See, he wants to have his cake and eat it too. He wants to have his cake and eat it too. You see, at one point, at one junction, he's trying to say, "Oh, slavery, you know, what always happened and throughout history, and what throughout history." Because the obvious question is, Thomas Sowell, well, if this is a historical consistency and historical a fixed variable, then why was this particular slavery outlawed? Why? Why was this particular slavery outlawed? That's the first question y'all need to be asking. As slavery has been practiced by all cultures and all people for centuries and centuries, which it has been. Why is this particular slavery being outlawed? And you cannot say that this slavery is being outlawed except because of the atrocities that come with it. But he wants to hide behind the American Civil War. Like, what? What are you doing? Look here. Look. Watch, y'all. Watch.
There was a sizable literature on the American just stated against slavery. No other nation ended slavery in the same way. It is only a small sizable literature on the American Civil War for all its stats.
Okay, y'all, I'm going to just keep the video off because it seems to be like lagging. My whole internet is like lagging. So I'm going to keep the video off. I'm going to just keep the audio on, right? So that at least we can hear, because people complaining about this video and stuff. And even me, I'm like watching the stream and I'm like, oh, me and my internet. Okay. So anyway, let's just listen now. Let's just listen. All right. We're going to listen now. You ready?
American Civil War for all its staggering carnage and an atypical part of the story of the worldwide crusade against slavery. No other nation ended slavery in the same way as the United States.
1 second, y'all. 1 second. I'm going to give me a moment, okay? I want to get into this. 1 second. All right, let's go back a little bit. Listen to what he's saying. Listen to what he's saying about the U.S. and ending slavery. Listen to what he's saying now.
In the same way as the United States did it after so short a struggle, as history is measured. How and why did slavery end in most of the world? There were two major processes. Over the centuries, as more and more territories around the world consolidated into nation states with their own armies and navies, raiding those territories to capture and enslave the people who lived within them became more hazardous in itself, and also risked military retaliation against the countries from which it came. Thus, more peoples became all slavers over time. Put differently, the areas which remained subject to slave raiding over the centuries were primarily those where the people lived in smaller societies. Such societies continued to exist where it was difficult, for geographic or other reasons, to consolidate largest under one government.
Nothing he said right now is founded in anything that is called reality. Not a single thing. He's basically saying that slavery ended because of the consolidation of nation states. And because these nation states are now able to defend themselves, this is why slavery ended. When did nation states begin? When did they start? Does anybody know? When did we start having this phenomenon of nation states? Does anybody know when we started having this phenomenon of nation states? He is trying to argue that slavery ended because of the consolidation of nation states, and now these nation states can now defend their borders. Therefore, the people have, ended slavery. And he's trying to say that the United States is different. It's different because, slavery didn't end in the United States like that. It ended because of a civil war. That's what he's saying. Does anybody know when Britain illegalized the slave trade? Does anybody know? Does anybody know? Britain illegalized the slave trade in 1807. A full almost 60 years before the United States Civil War. They illegalized it because when it was brought to their attention, the restraints and the torture tools that were being inflicted against slaves, that's when they made it illegal. Nation states started in World War I and ended after World War II. That's when we saw nation states. World War II ended in 1945. So you mean to tell me that Britain, who was heavily involved in divvying up these African and Asian countries and Caribbean islands and whatnot, they ended slavery and after World War II. Is that what you're trying to tell me? The math ain't mathin'. The math ain't mathin', Thomas Sowell. You know what I'm saying? You're not making any sense. Your math is not adding up at all. Just keep watching.
This was true of the Balkans, the backwaters of Asia, and much in Africa. The early modern era, with its numerous and severe geographic handicaps, was one of the last remaining areas from which vast numbers of people could be enslaved. Far from being targeted by Europeans for racial reasons, as some claimed.
Did you hear that? He's saying, that these Europeans did not target the Black Africans because of racial reasons. He said that, and Black folk are spreading this like it's the gospel truth. They were her property. Shall we read? Let's read, shall we? 1 second, y'all. I remind you, he said this. There were things done to Black slaves that were never done in the history of historydom. Okay, all right? And we're going to read one of these because he insists that white Europeans didn't go to Black Africa to pick up Black Africans to enslave Black Africans because they were Black. He insists on that. I'll go read. You're going to read. Y'all ready? Hide your kids. Okay. The people drawing up such documents were as specific as possible when itemizing the property and assets involved because they understood that omissions could lead to seizures of any property not explicitly included, such as documents that might indicate that a married woman was entitled to the wages of her slaves. Her slaves earned when they were hired to out to others if that she possessed the crops that her slaves cultivated. Furthermore, when a woman owned enslaved females, she and her family made sure to secure her legal title to the, and I'm quoting here, future issue. Bilal, what is future issue? Why are you talking about future issue? Oh, I'm going to tell you what future issue is because he's saying that Europeans didn't go to kidnap these Black Africans because they Black and stuff. That's what he's saying. But these white women were trying to lay claim to something called future issue of their slaves. What is future issue? Listen. Or increase of those slaves as well. Such a contingency secured a property that could amount to thousands of dollars in the future. As a formerly enslaved woman named Mary Jane Jones observed, the gift of enslaved female served as a kind of nest egg that the parents gave to their children. Jones' own mother was a gift from father to son, and the intent of this gift was to enable, listen, You want to know what future issue is? You want to know what future issue is? This is future issue. The gift was to enable Jones' mother to, and I'm quoting here, breed slaves for him. So if Thomas Sowell, if it wasn't about racial stuff, then why are they writing in contracts for future issue slaves, meaning slaves that are not born yet, okay, to have these slave women breed slaves for the slave masters? If it wasn't about black and white. When a black woman breeds for a slave master, what child is that going to be? Somebody in the chat, please. Where are my intelligent black people? What color is the child going to be? What color is the child going to be? If it wasn't about color, would it be necessary to make a practice like this? See, this is the difference that he's not telling you. Not only did they lay claim to the slaves, but they lay claim to the unborn bred children of the slaves. And not only that, they sold the children of the slaves to other slaveholders as slaves. This was never done before in human history. Never. Find one other people that this was done to. I mean, it should be easy if this wasn't about color, if this wasn't about race. Should be fairly simple, right? Where are these other white women that were being bred so that their children could be perpetually enslaved as well? Where did they exist? I'm asking the questions here, Thomas Sowell. This is too easy, man. Let's go back to this book. Let's go back to this book. Let's see what they say. When John Cotton drafted New England's first constitution in the year 1636, Moses, his judicials, he legalized the enslavement of captives taken in just wars, as well as strangers as willingly sell themselves or sold to us, New England, a way to imitate, in New England way, imitated the Old England way on slavery. Cotton reproduced the policies of his British peers close and far away. In 1636, Barbados officials announced that, and I'm quoting, there's a quote, because I didn't say it. He said that these Africans were not kidnapped because they were black. In 1636, officials announced that Negroes and Indians that come here to be sold should serve for life. You can't make this crap up. And I'm not even looking far. These are books I just have sitting right here. You know what I'm saying? I'm not even looking far. Why did this white man not say white folks can be enslaved for life? Thomas Sowell. Why did he explicitly mention Negroes and Indians to be enslaved for life? You cannot make this stuff up, man. Let's continue listening. Let's continue listening to what else Thomas Sowell got to say.
Africa was going to large supply of slaves only after centuries of Europeans enslaved other Europeans have been brought to an end by the consolidated nations and empires on the European continent. maternal system.
That's another lie. That is another lie. He don't know what I mean, he does know, but it doesn't matter. His reach and his academia, that is his claim to validation. So he can just lie, and trust that nobody will fact check him. And because he knows black people don't like to read, okay, he knows he can get away with it because he's a reader. He's an avid reader. He is smarter than most people. The word slave comes from the word Slav. Europeans kidnapped and were sold so many Slavs by the Ottomans or whatnot that word stuck as slave. Okay. The Slavs eventually started fortifying their towns and villages and whatnot, which caused a decline in the amount of Slavs that they can get. When the Europeans, particularly the Portuguese, when they started hearing about the gold that Mansa Musa was sharing for many, many years, they heard the legend of Mansa Musa about this gold in Africa. That's what caused them to make this trip eventually to Africa to find this gold. And they were gifted a black slave. Pope Innocent said that, you know what, this idea of having a black slave is a really good idea because they're far from us, they're different language, different everything, and they don't look like us at all. They don't look like us at all. All of this was going around the same time. He is saying some other stuff. I don't know what he's talking. I don't even know where he's getting this stuff from. I have no clue where he's getting this stuff from. Europe, around the time the beginnings of slavery, was going through some economic crises all throughout Europe. When Columbus discovered the New World, and all these weak natives who are just giving away land because the natives, they didn't believe that you could own the land. It was a cultural thing. They like own land. Like, what are you talking about? It's like trying to own the air or own the water or something like that to them. It's like it's culturally different. Columbus himself said these people are very generous and peaceful, and they will make great slaves for us. He said that. Did he say that because of what Thomas Sowell was saying, or because did he say that because they were racially different? Man, y'all are slow, man. Anyways, let's keep watching.
Slavery, serfdom, and by the church's pressures against enslaving fellow Christians, which was by no means the same as the church's saying that slavery, as such, was wrong. Similar consolidations of political units in parts of Asia led to a decline of slavery in those realms. While Africa became the main source of new slaves in later centuries, existing slaves continued to include peoples of many races living in many places around the world.
You don't know what he's talking about. Y'all remember when I talked about the Zenji Rebellion? The Zenji Rebellion was the first black slave rebellion that happened not in North America, not in South America, But 2 centuries after the Prophet, 2 centuries after the Prophet, in the Abbasid Empire. Remember we talked about this? So you have Abbasid Arabs, these Abbasids, mind you, who were kidnapping Black Africans, bringing them to Iraq, I believe it was, using them as forced labor. And then you get this big rebellion. And that rebellion, even it lasted as the longest lasting slave rebellion in history. And even though it wasn't successful at the end, that rebellion was the domino that caused the fall of the Abbasid Empire. That rebellion. And the funny thing is, anybody can go and Google and type in Zenji Rebellion today and look this stuff up and see that Thomas Sowell is talking a whole bunch of BS. All right? He's just talking a bunch of BS. Type Zenji Rebellion. Go see what happens. You don't have to believe me. So what's he talking about? Exactly. They're quoting Thomas Sowell like he's a historian. He's not a historian. He's an economist. He's not a historian.
Ending the slavery of all very difficult process, and one deliberate and second act for many generations. Ironically, the anti-slavery ideology process began to develop in country Britain at a time when the empire led slave trading and the economy of most of its overseas colonies in the Western Hemisphere depended on. Here again, the baffling present-day disregard of an international saga of strife, full of individual dramas as well as historic consequences, seems explicable only in terms of today's ideological agendas. While slavery was common to all civilizations, as well as to peoples considered uncivilized, only the civilization developed a moral revulsion against it very late in its history.
That's another lie. That is another lie. I don't understand where he's coming up with this stuff, man. He conveniently leaves out the fact that Africans were chattel. They were not considered to be human. What is the 3/5 compromise, Thomas Sowell? What is that? Do we need to like go there? Like how difficult is it to look up the 3/5 compromise? This is why people have a disdain for slavery. It's because of the demon European transatlantic slave trade, chattel slavery that these wicked demons practice. That's why they have the aversion. Do you know any other people in history whose women were bred to produce more slaves to be sold away from their mothers into slavery? Do you know any other people in history where the children of slaves were broken and it was described? Here, let me read from this book here, okay? Again, they were her property. Let me show y'all something, okay? Let me try to find this thing for you. Okay, 1 second, y'all, because y'all think this is jokes. Look at this. There's too much stuff in here. I'm just trying to find this one thing here. 1 second, y'all. Okay, here it is. Cecilia recognized that women were capable of possessing and exercising the power to make enslaved people submit to their will, and she instructed them to mete out punishment themselves. She advised, never scold when a servant neglects his duty, but always punish him. No matter how mildly, for maltreatment is the best. Severity hardens them, but be firm in this, and that no neglect go unpunished. Never let a servant say to you, I forgot it. Finally, let regularity mark every action, and the consequence will be that everything will be done in the right place and the right time. This is white women advising their other white women to punish their slaves. But why would they do that? Why would they do that, Thomas Sowell? It was because it was the law. What do you mean, Bilal, it was the law to punish your slaves? What I mean is that if you did not punish the slaves, then you would be punished according to the law. Not in South America, but in America. Oh, you don't believe me? Let's read, shall we? Shall we read? When a slave person in Louisiana was found guilty of revolting or a plot to revolt against his or her mistress, or willfully and maliciously striking his or her mistress, or the child or children of his or her mistress, or any white overseer appointed by his or her owner to be superintendent, were required to report these acts to the state. What are they required to report? I hope y'all are listening. They were required to report any slave who was guilty of revolting or plotting to revolt or willfully striking his or her master or willfully striking the children of his or her master or willfully striking the overseer. Mind you, the overseers are there to whip the slaves, okay? That's what they're there for. And if a slave decided that he want to hit back or she want to hit back, they were required by the state to report these instances. If a mistress were to willfully and intentionally, listen, neglect to give information against or refuse to give up her slave or slaves, the said mistress shall, upon conviction thereof, forfeit to pay the sum of $500. You can't make this stuff up. This is why there's this fear factor between black folk and white folk. And why white folk find it so easy to punish black folk. Because not only are they encouraged, but it's required to them by law to punish black people. Because if they don't, the law will punish them. One half of which shall be given to the informer and the informers, and the other half to the parish in which the offense shall have been committed, and the imprisoned shall until the same, they will be imprisoned until the same is paid. So you're facing fines and imprisonment for not doing what? Reporting your slave, slapping your badass kids. But we're not going to stop there. Let's keep going. Furthermore, Southern laws make it clear that legislators expect mistresses to discipline the enslaved people they owned, whether by proxy or their own hand. They required by law that slave owners punish their slaves by proxy or by their own hand. By law. In South Carolina, for example, if an enslaved person ran away for a period of 20 days or more, masters and mistresses were required to publicly and severely administer up to 40 lashes with the whip for the first offense. Thomas Sowell. This is why there was a movement to end the African slavery. Not because of what you're saying. This stuff right here. Ain't got nothing to do with what you're talking about. Nobody knows what you're talking about. And all these dense Negroes spreading this stuff all over the place. If the slave owner failed to do so, the local constable would do it at the owner's expense. With each offense, the punishment became more brutal, eventually calling for branding, dismemberment, and after the fifth offense, death. So if you run away from your masters, first offense, light work, 40 lashes, okay? You offend again, you're going to get branded. You offend again, they're going to chop your feet off. You try to escape one more again, they're going to kill you. While the legislature probably saw this intensified brutality as a deterrent for enslaved people who hope to escape the bondage, these punishments also serve to compel slave owners to comply with the state. You can't make this stuff up. And just pearly things. Slavery's embellished, right? A lot of the stuff is just made up. This is made up? How do you answer this? And slave person value would diminish with each punishment, and paired with the state's decision to impose greater fines upon the masters and mistresses for failing to punish their slaves after subsequent offenses, those owners had good reason to acquiesce. I don't know who are these Negroes spreading Thomas Sowell as some great historian, but this is long overdue. I think what I'll do, inshallah, after Ramadan, I'll just make a series dedicated to Thomas Sowell and his lies. Only that. Debunking each and every single one with receipts. Not showing some ancient picture about they were sad.
Today it seems obvious, as Abraham Lincoln said, if slavery is not wrong, nothing's wrong. The hard fact is that for thousands of years, slavery simply not issue, even among the great religious thinkers or moral philosophers of civilizations around the world. We may wonder why at 15 centuries after the Sermon on the Mount, the anti-slavery movement. But a more profound question is not when the leading moralists in other civilizations rejected slavery at all. There is no evidence.
You see how you do that there, right? He put the Muslim picture. Well, why aren't the Muslims rejecting slavery? The Muslims outright reject slavery, as is done by these devils from Europe. Don't confuse the Islamic slavery with what those devils did. In Islam, slaves have rights. In Islam, you cannot just kidnap free people, breed their women, sell their children, chop their husbands into little pieces unless they give you a little poo-tang. You can't do that in Islam. In Islam, you get a slave. How you get slave? When your people decide to fight the Muslims and they lose, instead of killing y'all, we put you into slavery. And you can buy yourself out of slavery. You can buy your freedom. Your children will not be enslaved. What you talking about? Where is the equivalent of 3/5 of a man in the Islamic world? Where is that? Can you find it for us, Mr. Thomas Sowell? Don't try to pull that one on us. Y'all are tripping.
According to a scholarly study, slavery came to attack any part of the world in the 18th century. That is when it first in Europe. Themselves leading slave traders of the 18th century, Europeans nevertheless became, in the 19th century, the destroyers of slavery around the world.
Are Europeans the destroyers of slavery? What's colonization? What is colonization? What is going on in Africa with the resources today? What is happening in Haiti today? Why does Haiti have to pay reparations to their slave owners to be free? And they just finished paying, I think, like 1980 something. I can't remember the year exactly. In 2015, the British slave owners were finally paid off for their last slaves. What is you talking about? Why are the French African countries paying 30% of their natural resources to France? What is France giving them in return? Except weapons to kill their own people and keep them under control. These Europeans ended slavery. Give me a damn break. Give me a break. And yet, y'all Negroes are spreading this stuff.
Not just in European society or European offshoot societies overseas, but in non-European societies as well, over the bitter opposition of Africans, Arabs, Asians, and others. Moreover, within Western civilization, the principal impetus for the abolition of slavery came first from very conservative religious activists, people who would today be called the religious right.
Oh, give me a damn break. Oh my gosh. Give me a break. The religious right are the very same people which you call Confederates today. That religious right? The Confederates, that's what you're talking about? These white Christians who believe their Lord and Savior Jesus Christ, so another white man. You know what? Since we're talking about that, that's what he said, the religious right? Look, back to this book. I didn't say it. He said it. He said the religious right were the ones who were fighting against slavery. The slave owners, the Confederates, the Southerners, the religious right, he's saying they fought against slavery. Okay, look. So far as I individually am concerned, she calculated she was reduced to utter beggary for the $30,000 her father had given her when she married when she married was invested in Negroes alone. We're talking about after the Civil War. After the Civil War, this particular lady, she invested her money. Her name is last name is Thomas, right? She invested her money into Negroes. Now the Negroes are free. Listen to what she says. She's from the same religious right that he's talking about. She's from the same religion. Listen to what she says, okay? Invested in Negroes alone. This view of the case I did not first take, and it is difficult now to realize it. I did not know how ultimately my faith oh my gosh. Oh, the religious right. My faith in revelations and my faith in the institution of slavery had been woven together. What was woven together? Her faith in revelations, the Bible, and her faith in slavery. That was woven together. The religious right. That's what he's talking about. Slavery, and I'm quoting it. She said it out of her own mouth. Slavery was done away with, and my faith in God's holy book was terribly shaken. The religious right. Religious right, people. You're welcome, Thomas Sowell. You're welcome. This live, it took a little bit longer than I anticipated because, we had some technical difficulties with the internet. But if you guys want it, inshallah, I'll do a series on this dude, bro. Because I'm just tired of him now. I'm tired of seeing Thomas Sowell in my feed and stuff. I'm tired of Muslims who just found him yesterday. Oh, why don't you watch Thomas Sowell? I'm tired of that stuff, man. You just found about this dude yesterday, man. Y'all is silly as hell, man. It's so crazy. It's so simple to, how difficult is to fact check this stuff that he's saying. And you as black people should be invested in fact checking this stuff. But you don't. Intellectually lazy. And as the Prophet Muhammad said, it's sufficient enough for somebody to be considered a liar that he spreads everything that he hears. It's very simple to dismantle this man. Very, very simple. It don't take much. Any historical book on slavery, anyone, just pick one. Well-respected historical book on slavery will refute his claims very easily. Very, very easily. But you refuse to read about your own history. You should be more interested about your history than anybody else. You let controlled opposition tell you what your history should be. Y'all are tripping. Anyways, I'll leave y'all with that. Salaam Alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.